Okay, we're live.
That's a new button I have to press. Hello, everybody. Looks like everyone's here. Good evening. Welcome to the July 14th, 2021 Mercer Island Arts Council regular video meeting. The time is now 6:32. I'm Erin Vivian, Chair of the Arts Council. Tonight's Arts Council meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The video of this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this week. City staff, liaisons to the Arts Council, and other panelists are also participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members may be listening to the meeting by telephone or online. Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Board members, please ensure that your microphones are turned on for the roll call. Staff, can you please call the roll?
Okay, Erin Vivian.
Here.
Amy Barnes. Anu Meha. Eric Gordon.
Here.
Suzanne Scone.
Here.
Gayleen Vaden.
Here.
Great, thank you.
All right, tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances. However, individuals can speak to the Arts Council on any item provided they have registered their request to speak with the city staff by 4 p.m. today. Staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the board?
No appearances signed up tonight. Maybe someday they'll show up.
All right, thanks. Okay, so now we welcome you, Sarah. Sarah Bluvas, Economic Development Coordinator, to provide a staff update.
All right, let me just share my screen really quickly. Okay, so just a few updates tonight. First of all, I wanted to give you all an update on our progress to return to in-person meetings. As you all are probably aware, most of the COVID-19 related restrictions on activities and business operations lifted at the end of June, but we are still under a state of emergency in the state, and we're still operating under the governor's OPMA proclamation that requires remote meetings. So right now at the city, we are working towards offering a hybrid meeting option. So that would be in person and remote to satisfy that requirement under the OPMA proclamation. On August 31st, City Council is doing a dress rehearsal of the technology and trying it out. I believe staff will be sitting at the dais in City Council chambers while everyone else is still remote. And then if that works well, they will go live on September 21st with a hybrid model for City Council. So eventually we're hopeful that this will trickle down to boards and commissions either late this year or early next year. Part of the problem is that it just requires a lot of staff resources. Right now we need at least 2 staff to be able to run the hybrid option. So we just want to make sure that we can shift to this model efficiently. And there's also a possibility that we may move to full in-person if the proclamation is no longer in effect, which would happen if the state legislature passed a law kind of removing the remote meeting requirement, or the state was removed from a state of declaration of emergency. So right now, still working towards the hybrid option. And another thing to note is if we do as a board make it into the hybrid model, we will have to move to City Hall for our meetings. And that's due to the technology requirements. The community center is just not retrofitted right now to be able to offer the hybrid option. I'm not sure if it's in the works for future. So right now, if we move over, we will be at council chambers. We sent an email to you all about this recently. I think you've actually received a couple of messages, both from the city clerk's office and from me. Board and commission recruitment reopened on June 25th, and we have 2 positions open. There's more information in the application online at the city's website. The application has been updated slightly, so just make sure if you are doing any recruitment or reaching out to people who had been interested in participating in the board in the past, that you send them the link, this link, or the link that I sent you all via email to make sure that they have the most up-to-date application. The deadline's August 13th, and then City Council will do the second round of appointments at their meeting on August 31st. And this, again, just a plug to share with your networks. I know some of you have reached out individually asking additional questions about requirements and for extra information that you can share, and that's great. We would really love to get back to a board at full capacity. So make sure that if you have been recruiting anyone or talking with anyone, that you follow up well before August 13th. And we staff are definitely happy to talk with anyone who you've been talking to, happy to answer questions or share more information about the board and just city operations in general, if that would be helpful. And then just a few more updates. Routine public art maintenance is underway. We prioritize 16 works of art based on the art site assessment that was conducted earlier this year and our ongoing maintenance budget. A few meetings ago, we talked briefly about some major public art maintenance needs that we still need to address. And I think we will likely address a course of action for those works of art in the Planning and Policy Reset Committee soon. So stay tuned for more about that. Two fun art events that used to take place in Town Center, but were on pause last year, returning or have returned. So the Friday Art Walk is back. The first one was last Friday, July 9th. Here I have a couple pictures on the top. That's the artist who is at Suzanne Czar's gallery. And then there's an image of the mural again that's at the Boyd collection right now. So several businesses participating in this and activating Town Center. And the next Art Walk will be August 6th. And just as a reminder, it's the first Friday Art Walk, but this month they shifted to the second Friday because of the 4th of July holiday. And Art Uncorked is also coming back. I don't know if they have officially rolled out their marketing yet for this. I know that the chamber is going through a little bit of a leadership transition right now, but maybe Suzanne can also speak to it later and provide some more details, but it will be coming back on Friday, September 10th at the Outdoor Gallery. You can check it out, more info at the Art Uncorked website up here on the board or on the screen, and that should be updated with more information soon. And then one final update, we have a few upcoming city meetings this July. Open Space Conservancy Trust Board meets tomorrow night. City Council meets for their second meeting of July next Tuesday, and then Planning Commission has a special meeting on July 28th. And then we will take a pause for August. There will be no boards and commission meetings. There is a City Council meeting on August 31st, but that's actually a special meeting that was rescheduled from September 7th to account for the Rosh Hashanah holiday. So just, we'll hear the reminder a couple of times tonight, but no board and commission meetings, no kind of regularly scheduled City Council meetings for the month of August. And that is my staff report.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, our first item of regular business is to review and consider approving meeting minutes. We did not have a quorum at the last meeting, so we don't need to approve those minutes, although notes of discussion were included in your agenda packet. However, we do need to approve the May 12th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Board members may have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 12th meeting.
I think I'm missing as an attendee from that one. I can't remember. I'm missing on one of them. So that would be my only request.
That your name is not included as an attendee when you were an attendee?
Right.
Okay, so do we need to have a motion to amend the minutes to add Amy's, or can we just add Amy's name as an attendee?
Yeah, we can just do a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, So let's amend, which, was it the May meeting or the June meeting, Amy?
I think it was the May, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you were at both of those meetings, Amy.
Yeah, I show up as voting on things, but
But we just need to update the roll call at the top. Okay. Thank you for catching that.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
second,
Thanks, Eric. Is there a second?
second, Zavini.
Thanks, Amy. There's a motion by Eric and a second by Amy. Is there any discussion, further discussion on the minutes? If not, staff, please conduct a roll call vote.
Okay, Amy Barnes,
Yay. Approved.
Anna Meha, Eric Gordon,
Approve.
Suzanne Scone,
Approved.
Galen Baden,
Approved.
and Erin Vivian.
Approve.
Great, thank you.
All right, so the motion passes and the minutes are approved. Okay, so for our second item of regular business, it's our pleasure to welcome James Guertzman and Casey Marvin from the Moonlight Collective. Tonight, James and Casey will present a plan for Prairie of Possibility, which is a proposed light art installation for Mercerdale Park.
Hello.
Board members, sorry, one more thing. Board members, just if you haven't had a chance to look, the proposal was included in your agenda packet and it's outlined there. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, you can glance over it now or later, but please, let's give James and Casey our attention. Thanks, James.
Thank you. And I don't know if you want me to present the slides or Sarah, if you'd like to present the slides from your side.
Actually, James, I just gave you presenting capacity, so go for it.
Great. Okay. Let's try this. Can you all see this? Can you see this? Yeah. Great. Okay. So thanks, everyone. I wanted to introduce the project, and we are here because we would like to bring this project to Mercer Island. Originally, this project was envisioned for Burning Man for next year. It's a large-scale project. I'll go through the details in a second, but that's the context. And as we began planning this project for Burning Man for next year, we realized it would be very beneficial if we had a chance to run it at a slightly smaller scale prior to taking it all the way to the desert in the middle of Nevada next year. And so we looked around, and obviously being a Mercer Island resident, Mercer Island would be a perfect location to host this project as a way of bringing it up as we learn how to run it at scale. And so I brought this to the Arts Council, to some members, to suggest it as a possibility. I think there was some interest. And so what I'd like to do now is take you thoroughly through the presentation, the proposal, to see if we have a interest in actually bringing this to Mercer Island. So as a quick summary of the project, it's a light art installation. It consists of 200 light bases. Each base has 7 kind of glowing fiber optic stalks, for a total of 1,500 of these fiber optic stalks that are going to be spread out across a field. We're envisioning Mercerdale Park as the ideal location for it. We have a couple different proposals we'll talk about in a second as to how we might lay them out. But it's an interactive installation. The installation consists of these glowing stalks. They're very colorful. They change over time. I've been running it at a very small sort of prototype scale in my front yard, and it really is sort of mesmerizing. And the idea is that this glowing field of light is the perfect sort of antidote to what we've all been through with the pandemic. It's a way of bringing the island together as a very sort of opportunity for the island to experience this as a community. Our proposal is to run it Friday, October 1st through Sunday, October 3rd, 3 evenings. It really works best in sort of full darkness. So the proposal is 7:30 to 10:30, which at that time of year should be fully dark. And we are requesting some funding to help us with the cost of both building and scaling the project, although we're not looking for the full cost. We're just looking for something to help us out. And we'll let me kind of take you through now a little bit of the proposal and specifics, and then open it for questions. And so we really do see this as being a literal beacon of light in a sort of dark time, or as we're coming out of a dark time. This is a very, when people have been walking through my yard to experience this, and I know some members of the council have had a chance to try it, so I might encourage them to share their thoughts. It's very, it's just a sort of joyful experience. I mean, you're surrounded by these colorful lights. They sway in the breeze, they sway in the wind, so they look sort of like a field of glowing grasses. We have a couple different modes we can run this in. We can run it in a mode in which it cycles through 4 different seasons each hour. So every 15 minutes is a different season: spring, summer, winter, fall. Those seasons are inspiring the lighting and the animation. We can control the color across this huge field of light. And so we can bring through sort of waves of light. When we're, for example, in the summer season, we can almost have the experience of, for example, lightning cackling across the lights, or more kind of a kind of green, red, blue color scheme. When you get to winter, we can go sort of whiter. We're gonna have fun sort of playing with and programming out the different animations. We also have the opportunity to choreograph to music and actually have sort of a set programmed piece. And so our envisioning is at the top of every 15 minutes, we'll have a brief song or piece of music play that we have choreographed lights to. We also have the opportunity, if we choose to make it more interactive by, for example, inviting a local dance group to potentially present, or even potentially have the band, say, present a piece live that we then choreograph too. So these are all some of the options we have to make it more of a community-based piece, a little bit more interactive. In terms of how this might lay out in the field, we have a couple different proposals. One proposal is sort of 9 groups of 24 of these bases. Each base has light stalks that kind of come out of it. Each light stalk, the tallest, is about 5 feet tall. And they kind of come out and they kind of droop over in a sort of very organic shape. And so we've determined through trial and error that having these light bases roughly 8 feet apart is sort of the optimal spacing. And so this shows you at scale what it would look like if we had 9 groups of 24 lights each spread out across the whole park. That would really encourage residents to sort of walk in and among these groups. And it would be kind of, taking advantage of the full field. The other option we have is sort of cluster them all much more tightly. This is actually more like the actual presentation we're going to have at Burning Man next year, where we are envisioning this big sort of circle of light. In this case, this gives us a sense of scale. Mercer Park is a big park. This circle of red lights here, each of these lights, don't forget, is actually, each of these dots is actually 8 feet wide. This entire circle is 130 feet in diameter, with a clearing in the middle, roughly 40 feet in diameter. And so people have a chance to walk down these sort of aisles and then sort of be in and among these lights as they're animating. We do need power, but not a lot. It's basically one standard outlet's worth of power. 20 amps is all we need. These lights are actually fairly efficient. We may need an additional circuit to power amplifiers and music, depending on exactly how far we go down that route. And we also will need parking for a truck that we can use to unload, and ideally remain parked there for the duration of the installation, and then load back in again on the last day. We do need some sort of security, whether this is going to be volunteer or we choose to pay for a security guard, just because the cost is significant. This is going to cost about $30,000 or so in terms of all the lights and the equipment, and so it's not an insignificant investment to have sitting out on a field for several days. We are envisioning schedule-wise using Thursday the 30th to do the actual installation. Use Thursday night as sort of a dry run before we invite people or notify the public, and then Friday through Sunday are the actual installation evenings, and then Monday we do the kind of final strike and remove it. This is the Muna Collective. There are 4 members of us. This is my kind of core team. Casey, my colleague, is on the call with us. She's our creative director. We also have my friend Paul McDaniel, our technical director, programmer, and Guy Whitmer is an audio designer who's working on the audio and the music aspects of this. One of the concerns in sort of picking the date was just in terms of the logistics of staging this event. So right now, these lights are being manufactured in China by a factory there. We have, like I said, 9 of them now sort of on hand that we've been using for prototyping. We have placed an order with the factory for 225 of the bases that are being manufactured now. The plan is to have them shipped out at the end of July. Shipping takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. And so we should have them in hand by the middle to end of August, which hopefully gives us, we'll have them in hand by the middle to end of September, which should give us time to have it on hand in time for the actual presentation. So with that, I would love to open it for any questions and or discussion.
I had a question. This is fantastic. I was looking at the times and the date, the time of the year, and I was wondering if it made any sense to do it a little bit later when it gets darker earlier, so you have a longer span each night. Also for people like myself who have younger kids where they go to bed around 7:30, 8 o'clock, if this was something they would love, if it would be maybe a little earlier for them.
Yeah, we could do it a little later. I mean, you talk about the kind of thinking that went into the date selection. The first is temperature. Obviously, the colder it gets, the less comfortable it is to stay out all night. And the team that we put this together, we're envisioning to spend, we'll be out there all night, basically, setting up and then running it. So that was one small consideration. By middle of October, sort of early mid-October, obviously the temperature is still fairly temperate. The other consideration is we do have another arts festival in Seattle that has expressed interest in hosting this. It's an event called the Borealis event, which is mid-October. And timing-wise, we were actually hoping to potentially stage this here on Mercer Island first before we try to take it to South Lake Union for the Borealis event later in October. Although the Borealis event is not confirmed, they're still waiting to get permits from the city of Seattle for that. And so if that event doesn't happen, then we could run this middle of October without any real issues. Once we start getting into November, that's when we start getting more concerned about the temperature and the timing. Casey, what were the exact dates of the Borealis event? Was that October sort of 15th timeframe?
The following weekend from what we're proposing here.
Okay, so October 8th.
The other minor consideration is hi guys, Casey. I'm dialing in from San Francisco, actually. And so logistically speaking, stacking them up back to back was helpful for me.
Yeah, but it's a fair point, Eric. Yeah.
Was there a specific ask in terms of, you mentioned $30,000 cost? Was there something that, an exact amount that you're looking for to fundraise?
No, I mean, we have private donors lined up, but it is, this is ultimately, this project has scales. And so I'm really kind of looking to the Arts Council to know what sort of grants might be available. We don't have a specific ask.
I have a question. Could you go into a little bit more detail about your security requirements?
Sure. So the bases themselves, there's going to be, 200 of them. So it's not really practical to sort of lock them down. And so, they're just going to be sitting out on the field. I imagine they're tempting, for folks to play with. And so our hope would be that we'd be able to have essentially someone there essentially around the clock to keep an eye on the installation during that time. So our envisioning is we could potentially hire a private security guard, or potentially during maybe only have a security guard in the evenings and have, for example, volunteers during the day keep an eye on it. Obviously, when we're there, we don't need to have security. We're not concerned about like a bouncer type. We just want someone that's there to keep an eye on it and be able to warn people away if they're in there fidgeting with the lights.
I'll add to that. We did hear from other light festival curators that they've seen participants trying to make off with a generator. So we want to just try and avoid stuff like that. And so we also heard from a different light festival curator that just having a lone roving security guard on the move tends to ward against that sort of behavior.
One thing I forgot to mention, actually, I did want to share other kind of experiences with similar installations. So San Francisco was running a similar installation in their Golden Gate Park last winter. It's at the height of the pandemic back in December. And it was a phenomenally well-received installation. I did not have a chance to see it in person, but I have friends who live in San Francisco who did. And they were kind of raving about it. Every evening it was filled with people kind of in there wandering around, experiencing the lights. And it was actually so popular, they ended up extending it, I think, by at least a month past the original end date. And there's something.
It's actually still up.
They still haven't ended it. Yeah. Okay, so it's continuing. It's just something magical about lights at night in a park that people they're interactive. They're not just sitting there, but they're glowing. They're changing colors. It's a really kind of magical experience.
Yeah, the kids go wild.
James, this is Ryan. What am I? I'm the operations manager for the city, kind of focused on recreation. Would you be able to stop sharing your screen so we can kind of see everybody?
Absolutely.
Might help the discussion. I like to read people's reactions a little bit.
Of course.
I would be curious on if you could just touch on the duration. It seemed to me to be a pretty limited duration that you were proposing, and if you could just speak about that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, no, look, as with the San Francisco installation, we're open to a longer duration. I think the considerations are one, security, right? So the longer this runs, the ongoing security costs. Whereas if you keep it very focused in a single 3-day period, we can it just concentrates the need. If we wanted to do it, for example, for a full week, we're certainly open. From our perspective, our goal in doing this, don't forget, is to get experience running this at scale. Burning Man will be a week-long event. In the desert. We'll be running it basically all night long for an entire week. So the more experience we can get running it, sort of for real, the better. We just didn't want to, we were trying to balance, Mercer Island's not a huge island. And so we figured 3 nights would give us enough time to sort of get, people through and have the full experience. But I will say this, based on feedback, this is extremely Instagrammable installation. Even just the people who are trying it out in my yard, we're taking lots of selfies and pictures and sharing them. And so we may very well get a pretty large word of mouth reaction to this. And I could easily imagine, folks from off island wanting to come in and check it out as well, which means we might actually have quite a sizable interest. And so if that really were to happen, to your point, spreading it out over a longer period of time might help address any concerns there might be with crowding or parking or such things. That's one of the benefits of Mercedale Park, of course, is that it is parking and access is probably better than it would be in other locations. One of other locations we were originally thinking of asking the council for was Luther Burbank Park, which also has nice big areas, but I think parking and access is obviously more of a consideration there than it would be in Mercerdale.
Looks like Salim has comments or questions. Had his hand up.
Yeah, so James and Casey, I wanted to thank you for bringing this to us. I was one of the few that was able to see the installation in your yard and really get an appreciation of how dynamic and much movement there can be to it. Can you talk a bit about how you see the layout progressing and the clusters? I can see the benefits of either one, but how do you think we land that plane before the event and make that decision?
I mean, I think frankly, we're just going to go and walk the field. I mean, we've done a little bit of that. I did a little bit on my own initiative, but I think the big, once we get the lights themselves arrive, I'll have an opportunity to do a small scale test. And I essentially, we can simulate this, and we're actually in the process of building out this installation in VR. So that we can actually simulate it and walk through the installation with virtual reality headsets to try to get a sense of what it will feel like. That will hopefully help us make a decision to decide if we think 9 clusters versus 1 big group is going to be more effective. But in the end of the day, I think what we're going to do is actually, once we have the lights on hand, the full inventory, we're going to actually set up one of these clusters and see if we think that's sufficiently large scale to get the full experience. We're actually, of the 225 lights we've ordered with the Chinese factory, we're having 30 of those airshipped, so they're going to arrive much sooner. They're going to arrive in a matter of a week or 2 after they're done being manufactured, with the remainder coming by sea. And so that's going to give us, we'll have on hand at that point 30 plus lights that we can experiment with and see what a cluster will look like.
Great, thank you.
I have a question too. This is Sarah with the city. James and Casey, you and I primarily talked about logistics. I still haven't had the opportunity to see the lights in person, although I have heard wonderful things. And I think the images you've been able to capture in your presentation really highlight how dynamic it could be. One thing we talked a little bit about is the city's Illuminate MI event, which we started last year as kind of a lights festival. During the pandemic, it consisted of, lights in Mercerdale Park and Town Center. We also did a couple of temporary public art related light projects. And so, we're thinking it would be great if there's also some way that we could tie in somehow potentially to Illuminate MI. We are hoping to present that event again this year. We're actually going to City Council next week to talk to them about it. But, you know, is there potentially an opportunity, like if you all, you know, we did kind of this test run in the October timeframe and then come back as part of the Illuminate MI event, either, you know, for something bigger scale or just pieces of it, perhaps in the outdoor gallery this time instead of Mercerdale. Is that something that you all would be open to exploring with us?
Yeah, we are open. And remind me, what are the dates you're going to be asking for that Illuminate MI event?
Ryan, do you remember specifically? It's kind of a evolving piece. The lights, the actual light installations, the lights in the trees will be up for a few months like they were last year, but the other components, something like this, like a temporary art installation, we're going to be talking with businesses about ways to activate their storefronts and maybe do some events as well, would be, I think, potentially sprinkled throughout in some capacity.
So two thoughts. First of all, yes, we're certainly open to the possibility of bringing this back. You know, I you know, come back to the issue of kind of grants and funding, but, you know, this is a very scalable installation. I mentioned we have 225 lights that we've ordered. You know, the lights cost, just to give you guys a sense of scale, they're about $100 a piece at scale. And so for Burning Man next year, we're planning to have 1,000 of these. You know, we have 200 now basically coming for this small scale installation. The idea of sort of slowly scaling up as we go between now and next September is part of our plan. So we're doing, hopefully, Mercer Island, you know, if this gets approved, we'd love to do Mercer Island this fall. And then our thinking is to actually try to do it in San Francisco early next year. And so doing a sort of interim event, another event here in Mercer Island would be fine. You know, again, the weather is just one of my considerations. We're going to be out there, you know, all night, every night for several weeks. You know, that's a consideration. This installation is not yet completely turnkey. It's not the kind of thing where, at least as currently set up, it requires sort of a human operator to be there running it. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't consider making it into more of a turnkey installation that we just, you know, have a laptop set up that just runs it without any human interaction. But that would be a slightly different experience we're envisioning for the October timeframe. And the other thing I will say, these lights themselves, by the way, they're quite vivid, even just by themselves. I've already had people offering to buy them for their front yards, you know, where you know, people are looking to buy a couple of these just as a lamp. And so one thing we could consider is not doing the full field-based installation, but if there's an area where, for example, you wanted to have 4 or 5 of these in a small clump, that's actually a lot more doable, and that also might be something we could consider, because those actually could literally be scattered around the town center depending on where you wanted to put them.
Hi, it's Erin. It just reminded me of some ideas that we had about maybe having some teasers at city events over the summer, if that might be a possibility, to bring a couple to our music events, or you know, little hints and
little taste. We certainly would be happy to do, you know, teasers like that. So, you know, as people are walking back to their cars, for example, in the dark, we could have some of these along a path or something like that. We'd be open to that idea.
So I just want to thank you for bringing this, first of all, to Mercer Island and giving us the opportunity to host this, because I think it's a great opportunity for us to bring something significant to our community when we haven't had many art experiences over the past year and a half. So we really appreciate that. And I was also one of the people that got to experience it. And I think they're very impressive. They're fun. They're inspiring. And I love the possibilities of bringing music and dance into it. Can really inspire a whole host of other creative involvement and community involvement. And I see Suzanne's hand up, but I have one question before I move to you, Suzanne, is we had talked a little bit about other community group involvement. And I'm just curious, this is a question for James and also city staff, if anyone has heard from community groups that are possibly interested in joining forces and being involved with some sort of project surrounding this.
So I'll just say I have not yet reached out to any other groups. So this is the only group I've reached out to. I wanted to kind of wait and take the temperature of this organization before think of others. Like I mentioned the band. I know the band is often involved in this. Frankly, a percussion line. If we could get the drum line out, we could do some really really cool stuff with percussion. That would be one type of interaction. I also know that there's a number of dance studios on the island with young performers, and that's another thing that we had it's just my front yard, but we had a number of neighborhood kids over, and they were just running in and around the lights and just having a blast. And I could imagine actually a choreographed piece of dancers flitting in among these lights would be pretty wild, especially at the 8-foot distance. You actually have enough space around each individual light that you actually could have a pretty cool piece. But that would of course have to be choreographed and staged. But if we had the time, if we decided we wanted to do that, that would actually be a pretty phenomenal experience, I think.
Thank you.
Aaron, if I could jump in real quick, this is Ryan again. You asked a question about engaging other groups and whatnot. That's not something that city staff have done for this specific installation. We have begun that process for Illuminate MI. And I would just remind the group that we do have Mostly Music in the Park happening into September, and then Illuminate MI happening in mid-November. So there is a timing element that I do want to make sure we're all cognizant of and thinking about, and not to rain on the parade in any way. I do worry at times about Mercerdale Park in October or even later in the year. It turns into a swamp. And so, James, I would be curious just maybe the resiliency of the light.
It's a good question.
Just a question about that.
Yeah, so the light bases are water. They're IP67 water. They're waterproof. They're not designed to be submerged in water, so you can't put them in, let's say, a swimming pool. But they are waterproof. You can leave them out in the rain. I purposely left them in my yard for 2 weeks with the sprinklers running, every morning, and they were fine. So rain is not a consideration. And the water and the cabling is all waterproof. That said, it's not a lot of fun to look at them in the rain. And another reason we picked the very beginning of October is historically, October 1st through 3rd is still a fairly dry. There's a fairly good chance of having good weather then. Obviously, once you start getting to late October and November, you start to risk of having just rainier weather. So that is another consideration for going earlier than later.
Thank you. That's really helpful from a.
And just say one more thing. If you remember the layout of the park, the way we're envisioning this is setting up essentially a tented, like a small little tented area where the control station is going to go. It's basically a laptop and an audio mixing board. Where the controllers, the whoever's running this installation would stand in this or sit in this covered area, and then we can have a run of up to 100, 200 feet between that area and the actual lights themselves. I don't know that this group necessarily needs to get into specifics, but each clump of 24 bases needs its own power and control signal. And so, depending on how we configure it, we just have to have essentially 1 or 2 cable runs from that back to this control area. And cabling is a concern. We obviously have potential for trip hazards, and so that is one thing to think about. Is it's going to be dark when people are walking around, and so our envisioning is to kind of bundle the cables together, put a kind of cable cover over those, just to help make it safer.
Thanks. I was going to ask about the wires as well. But Suzanne, I know you've had your hand up, and then Gayleen after Suzanne.
I just wanted to thanks James for bringing this opportunity to the city and presenting this tonight. I'm very enthusiastic about it. I think it's just what the community needs, and I'm totally in support of it. I just wondered if Sarah wanted to talk at all about the funding opportunities, like our is it the For Culture grant that we are the grant that we had to sort of pass through? Is that a possibility?
So that is a consideration that Ryan and I are hoping to discuss with the Arts Council kind of after this project proposal discussion. But Yes, there are a couple possibilities to provide funding to support this project. The For Culture grant that we receive part of it could be used to support the creation and installation. It gets a little tricky because For Culture has their own public art granting process. And so we would just need to really look at the project and the parameters and make sure that we are, meeting the needs of the grant, covering the public benefit and everything like that. There's also possibility, and the timing on this is short, just based on the pause in meeting schedule this summer with city council and boards and commissions. But you could use 1% for art funding to support this. There is some precedent for using 1% funds to support temporary visual arts projects. The topiary deer come to mind from several years ago. So that is another avenue that we can explore as well.
Okay, Gayleen? Did you have a question, Gayleen?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Okay.
Unmute. I was wondering, James, whether you had any promotional materials that you would be willing to share that we could put on social media or distribute to local merchants and, otherwise
sure.
try to publicize.
Yeah, no, Casey is our resident designer on the team, and we will have a website set up. Casey, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can take this one. So yes, we will have a website that is in progress now, and I can alert you when it is live. We have an active Instagram account. I can shoot the handle out to all of you. That is live already. The lean on that is more around the making of. So you get a chance to see what goes into the magic as we're building it, as we make all our mistakes, and as we improve on those prototypes. And then in addition, James mentioned that our software director is going to be working on a VR experience. The main purpose of that is to help us do a lot of the concept design work without actually moving around tons and tons of hardware. But the secondary goal of that is we can use that to create probably a pretty cool sizzle reel, some sort of render animation type thing that'll feel like a video. So once that is available, and I don't have an ETA on that, but that could be an awesome thing for us to share out to you guys and for you to share out with your constituents.
And I think for the purpose of some of our constituents, like the businesses, we also need some sort of print materials.
Yeah, could you tell me more about that?
I mean, we'll need to discuss it, but normally we have like flyers that we put in the windows of local businesses to help promote things, for example.
Sure. Yeah, we could absolutely work together on that.
Yeah, and we did do a brief photo shoot with the prototypes. That some of those images are frankly the ones that appeared in the presentation I shared with you. And then it would be very easy to stage if we wanted to, depending on the need, we could always stage some lights in a more professional setting with an actual backdrop and do a more professional shoot. That would be, in fact, that's probably something we're going to do anyway, just for our own purposes, because we will be submitting. Just so you all know, the way this timing works is we will be submitting. I keep mentioning the Burning Man opportunity. We will be submitting a proposal to Burning Man for next year for a grant, and those grant applications are due in the October-November timeframe. And so part of our consideration here is frankly using photographs from this installation to help support that additional grant process. But we may choose as part of that, we're going to be doing a photo shoot in a studio anyway, which we could always twofer, use those for promotional materials here as well.
I have a question for you guys, and you don't have to have the answer right now. One of the things I'm kind of curious about is in the past, when you've done events similar to this, what's been your approach to monitoring the traffic? I recognize this is not really like a ticket sales event. Do you have any sort of way of gauging the volume of foot traffic coming in on a particular evening?
I can take part of that. This is Sarah again. So last year when we did the 2 light art projects associated with the Illuminate MI event, we didn't have a mechanism to track foot traffic. A lot of the feedback that we received was pretty anecdotal, kind of being out in the park and hearing from people who had engaged with the projects. We did have a vandalism issue with the temporary project that was on view in the outdoor gallery. If I recall, there weren't really any issues with the lanterns project that was in Mercerdale aside from freak snowstorm. So I appreciate that you're considering weather. But we really, for other events that we've done in the park, it's usually like the Mostly Music in the Park one-time concerts each week. It's usually a rough head count. So that is something that we're trying to explore from a public art perspective, how to track engagement. We have a couple of digital platforms for our public art collection. If you all were amenable to it and already developing, website and content and all of that, we could incorporate this project into our digital platform. So that is one way to track to some extent. But yeah, we really don't have a major mechanism for it. Yeah.
Good to know. I didn't expect you would. But yeah, if we do decide to go forward and partner together, it might be interesting to talk about how we can think of like a low friction way of doing that.
Maybe you can talk, Casey, we got I see 2 hands up, but maybe Casey, you can talk to the Borealis event. I know that they basically give people time slots and they basically say, here's essentially, they don't have a formal ticketing system. No one's there collecting tickets. They just basically, people sign up, they get given a time slot and they're basically encouraged, to come during their slot. It's just a way of roughly gatekeeping it. And then people are encouraged to move on after their window.
Yeah. So lots of good ideas around there.
I was just going to quickly add, and Sarah can probably get the numbers for you, but we had at the end of October during Halloween, a pumpkin walk in one of our parks. And I'm certain that we gathered attendance for that. And I'm pretty sure that it was, well, should I even guess? I thought it was a couple and a half thousand. But we could probably get you the numbers on that.
Yeah.
To your point, Celine, that actually is one of the pieces of data that would encourage one layout versus another. The clumps is better. If we really think we're going to get a ton of traffic, the separate clumps will facilitate more people than having it all in one, even though it'll be kind of a more impressive scale to have it all in one big 130-foot circle. We'll actually be able to accommodate more foot traffic, I think, if we spread it out. But that's one of the things we can test. The other thing I'll just share right now is we have to make a decision. Something that the Moonlight Collective will decide on together with you is, do we want to allow people to walk in and among the individual light stalks versus just view them from the outside? And I can tell you from personal experience, people want to walk in and among them. It's very hard to keep them away from that. There is a trip hazard because each of these light bases is basically is a very small cable connecting it to every other light base. And so it's a sort of a daisy chain effect. Now, I will say this, we've had kids running in and among them and have yet to actually have anyone trip. So it's a minimal risk, but it is a risk. Versus if you have them on the outside, obviously you can control that a lot more carefully. And if we decide we don't want people walking in among them, we have to decide how we're going to actually prevent them from doing that. These ways is put a small fence or a rope line or something. We're not going to be able to stop someone who's determined to get in there, but we can at least sort of encourage people to walk around the outside. And again, having the clumps makes it more easier to walk around the outside versus wanting to go in and among them. But that's just another consideration.
Do you all have a sense of how these other communities are offering installations?
Yeah, the San Francisco one was built as a semi-permanent installation. And so they actually buried all their cables underground. They actually dug trenches for their cabling, and the actual lights were kind of mounted into the ground. Obviously, in Mercerdale Park, that's not an option. If we had, time and money, these light bases could be buried underground. It would actually be pretty effective and pretty frankly amazing if we were to do that, or put them in a bed of gravel or something. But that's a whole scale we're not prepared for this time frame.
Other options include, as James mentioned, there's like wire covers or sleeves that you could snap on them. Of course, that increased cost if we're thinking about getting sleeves for every single wire.
Yeah, we're also not envisioning, it's an important question for the grounds crew, we're not envisioning needing to put anything into the ground itself. So these bases will rest on the ground, on the park. They're about 8 pounds each. So they're heavy, so they would rest on the ground, but they would not need to, for example, we don't have to put it in the ground. If we wanted to, for theft reasons, we could put like a tent stake. Each of these bases has a sort of a flange with holes in it, because for Burning Man we are envisioning staking these down to the ground. So there's a hole designed to put a tent pole into. We're not envisioning we would need those, but because I also don't want to ask you to put 250 little holes in the ground for these tent poles. But it's minimal. The other thing we could do is if we wanted to for the cabling, we could do a similar thing. We could not just put a cover down over the cables, but we could also stake that down as well if we wanted to.
Okay, I see 3 hands now. Ryan, Suzanne, and then Eric.
I was just gonna ask, we're in a little bit of a unique situation right now with the community center being essentially closed to the public, not having rentals and whatnot. I'm wondering if you had ever thought of doing an indoor installation or an indoor type feature, just kind of raising the question to see if that's a possibility or not. I don't really lean one way or the other, but just wanted to bring that up.
It's possible. The goal of having outdoors, 2 reasons. One is it's meant to be a field of grass, and wind is one of the fact that they sway in the wind is one of the considerations that makes it sort of that much more magical. Doesn't mean we couldn't do an indoor installation. In fact, one of the post Burning Man possibilities for this thing is to actually take it to art galleries and do a permanent installation somewhere. But so the answer is it's possible. But it's, in our opinion, it's sort of more magical to be outdoors in a field.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Couple, just throwing out ideas. We've actually rented carpet before, like a red carpet. So you could also make paths for kids, very minimal, doesn't have to be through everything. You could use that as an option for directing traffic. And then also I would just say that being visible from the street that is to the east has a high desirability. I was driving down there kind of looking towards Mercerdale thinking how cool it would be to drive by and see the lights. So that's an added little bonus there. And then finally, I would say, maybe considering the first strip of parking at the thrift shop, making that temporarily handicap only, and then that would keep it open so people could drive through there, but also those that maybe are not able to access the development could just view it from their car.
I love that idea. And Suzanne, I want to say we also loved that idea about carpet. That was one of the fanciful wire solutions we vetted. The cons of that is it can get quite heavy and quite costly. So that was what we were counter considering.
So are you thinking, I was thinking just renting it for the 3 days, not buying it.
We hadn't considered the renting. That could be an interesting way to go about that for sure. And then what we like about that is, we can change the configuration in such a way where we can sort of curate these little nooks that encourage people maybe to even pop down for a little bit and enjoy under the stars, which is incredibly magical. So I love that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to let Eric have one last question, and then I think in the interest of time, we should move on to our board discussion about this. And if staff, you have any pressing questions for James and Casey, technical questions that might help us make a decision, now would be the time.
I'll make it real quick. What was the suggested length of the experience? I think it was 4 seasons, right? 15 minutes. So you anticipate people to be there about an hour?
That's exactly right. So 1 hour. And so the thinking is we'd have sort of 3 hours each evening. So sort of 3 full rotations through. You don't have to stay for the full hour. People can kind of come by for a little bit. But the thinking is if you want to get the full experience, it would be an hour.
So I was just looking at the 2 options. I would think that clustered option 1 would be so much more preferred. If you're gonna have a lot of people being there for an hour, it might be tough to do that second option where everyone's kind of really close together in that circle.
Yeah.
Good point.
I
Okay.
don't have, from a staff perspective, I don't have any more technical questions.
All right, then I guess Casey and I will drop off. And if there's any further questions, thank you very much for the
Thank
consideration.
you so
We're
much.
Thank you all very much.
And if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us. Happy to get back to you on those.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Definitely.
everyone.
Okay, so let's discuss feasibility and identify next steps. Sarah, did you want to take it from here, or do you want me to present sort of ideas about bringing this into our plan?
I can take it from here, and then we can fold those into the discussion. So we, in conjunction with the project proposal that was included in your packet, we also put together a staff report with just a variety of considerations that we've been thinking about over the past 6 weeks since this project came to us. So I put them in a PowerPoint. I'll go through it really quickly, just so for the public record, everybody has it. But I'm hopeful that we can, what Ryan and I really are asking for tonight is direction on how to move forward. There are a couple of things outstanding. We received a funding request, but not a specific one. So we want to figure that out. We have a work plan that's already been endorsed for 2021. So we likely need to shift some things around in order to make capacity to pursue this. And then we don't really have a process for temporary art installations. So that's something to consider as well. And then whether or not, we want to pursue something, trying to ask more pointedly to incorporate this in another events like Illuminate MI or perhaps something else. So let me just share really quickly. Okay. Okay, so first on the list is the 2021 Arts Immediate Action Plan. So you all know we've been talking about this for several months as part of the Reset Plan. Back in April, you all endorsed moving forward with Mostly Music in the Park, reopening the indoor gallery as it makes sense with operations at the community center, and then coordinating a community arts project. So we've all been working on moving those projects forward. City Council appropriated funds to support these projects, both from the general fund and authorized acceptance of our For Culture grant in support. So, pursuing this project likely means that we're going to deviate from the 2021 plan, which is fine. But our consideration that we want you all to think about is if you are asking us to deviate from the work plan, which item or items can be postponed or replaced in order to dedicate the resources to approving and implementing this project. Secondly, I mentioned there's no process for temporary art installations, no documented process. Of course, we have history of doing temporary art projects. Last year, we did a couple, as were noted earlier. The topiary deer were also a recent one in the last 10 years or so. So, from a staff perspective, it's really important for us to have a process, because then when ideas like this come up, to be totally honest, we can say yes, instead of saying, no, it's not in the work plan, or no, we don't have a process for that. So ultimately, we would prefer to have a process in place before moving forward with any project. But that said, we know that there's desire to take advantage of opportunities. We're building that kind of flexibility long-term into Arts Council work. And we definitely see the value in connecting this specific project to the idea of the community emerging from the pandemic, perhaps in maybe a more positive way, touching on an arts experience related to the pandemic than some of the other conversations we've had around community art making and opportunity. So the request that we have with this one is that, if you want to move forward with this, if you approve the project proposal, we would like to use it as an opportunity to develop that process and really prioritize it for the beginning of the year next year, so that as hopefully more cool opportunities come your way, we have a way to actually evaluate them and be able to really say yes or no in a way that's transparent and accountable. We talked about Illuminate MI. It sounds like there's maybe potential for doing something coordinated with that event. The thought process I think I have would be to, allow the request to use the space in some capacity on the timeline that they're requesting, but then working with them to identify a second way to incorporate it with the other lights event that we're doing later in the year. Maybe that's something that moves to the outdoor gallery. I liked James's idea there at the end about maybe just smaller clusters around town center or something like that. So with that in mind, and then also I will say there is some interest from the city level of including some sort of interactive or artistic light element in the 2021 Illuminate MI event. Now, again, we're going to City Council next week, so all of that's still pending, but there has been conversation about, some sort of light installation, something you can walk through and interact with. So this could be a candidate. So we're interested to know if you all support us moving forward with that idea in mind of incorporating the Moonlight Collective's work. And if not, is there interest in identifying an alternative temporary lights installation to add to that event? And then finally, the funding mechanism. Suzanne brought this up during the conversation. Moonlight Collective has asked for funding, not a specific request. So that's helpful knowing that our financial resources are limited. I already talked about two possible ways we could help support this financially. We could reallocate some of the For Culture Sustained Support Grant, which right now is earmarked for what we're calling the Community Arts Project in 2021. We could also request an appropriation from the 1% fund. We have not appropriated any funds for projects out of the 1% fund aside from our annual maintenance. So we would need to go to council to appropriate that. Like I mentioned earlier, timing is tight for this one because we would need ideally to get on the August 31st calendar in order to make that request of City Council. So my questions here are, if the Arts Council wants to move forward with this project proposal, do you also want to provide financial support? If so, how much financial support do you want to provide? So here are all those considerations. They're also included in your agenda packet. So I think just so we can keep the discussion open, I can refer back to these, but I think I'll stop sharing my screen right now, and then we can kind of take straw poll on what everyone's thinking and start talking about how we might want to move forward or not.
Thanks, Sarah. Does anyone have any, Suzanne, would you like to start off the discussion?
I can start out. Well, first of all, we had kind of conceived a community arts project, but I was really surprised. And it was sort of a visual writing, processing COVID-19 experience. But it seems to me, I'm kind of personally surprised, but people have moved on, so if we weren't to take this project or take this on, we'd have to either go with that or conceive of something else to offer the community, which I don't have any ideas. Maybe some of you do. I think this is a great community art project that community can participate in many, many different ways. It'd be great if we could get music and dance integrated in, but even, just having it at every age level, from kids to people, that can view it from their cars. I think it's really, really exciting. So I would call this the what we call the Community Arts Project. So that would be my leaning.
Thanks, Suzanne. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I'll just say I saw a lot of head nodding. If you want to really take a poll, you could just do a thumbs up, thumbs down and see how quickly we can move through this.
Okay, good idea. I'm supportive of doing that. Thumbs up. I can't see everyone's thumbs. Can the people, my computer screen's so little. Okay.
Everyone with thumbs has them up.
I see
Everyone.
a lot of thumbs up. So I think we are in agreement that we support replacing our original community arts project with this project. Next question. What was the next one, Sarah?
The next one is, it's not really a question, it's just more of a request related to process. So if we do move forward with this, we would like to prioritize developing the temporary arts project process by the end of the first quarter of next year. Feasibly, if people are open to doing a little policy work as on the side as part of the reset plan process, we could complete it this year and use this project as a way to inform what we're doing, as well as some past work that we've done to develop evaluative frameworks and that sort of thing for projects. So if I can get a thumbs up on the policy process piece of this, that would be great.
I have a question about that just very quickly. Didn't we start somewhat using some sort of a process that I think Damien had initiated, but that wasn't directly focusing on temporary art, but it was public art, right?
It was more programs and events based, but I actually do think that that would be a good one to build off of. Yeah, because it has kind of, it aligns the criteria with a lot of other things that already have a rough process related to them, like gallery exhibits and that kind of thing. So I think that would be, it's not a difficult a list, I think, on that policy work. It's just one we haven't done yet.
Okay. All right. So moving to the next question.
Actually, really quickly, Galen, do you have a question?
Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know where this fits in on the questions, but do we have the ability to do something like, you know, ask for support from local businesses or ask for donations at the event or something to help offset some of the costs, or is that not possible?
If I could chime in, Sarah, one of our challenges that we're going to be undertaking is we're going to be fundraising for Illuminate MI, which is a fairly large price tag. I would be concerned with having multiple fundraising ventures out there for separate items. And I think that's part of at least Sarah and my thinking regarding a potential of merging these together. Having this being an element of Illuminate MI to me makes a lot of sense. Helps with some of that funding aspect because it makes it that much bigger on the Illuminate MI side. So just my feeling around that. But I think, you know, as we move forward, that's something to be thinking about for these arts installations and whatnot. And as we're developing the policies and procedures around that, that may be a good footnote to put in there. So excellent question.
And that is a good segue to the next consideration. Do you all support exploring further with the Moonlight Collective, incorporating this project in some way with the Illuminate MI event?
Are we doing a thumbs up? Or is there discussion? Any discussion?
If anyone has comments or concerns or questions.
I think it's great. It would be awesome if we could do that.
It sounds like something you can certainly explore, and it sounds like it's just a marketing thing that, you know, it's a 1-2 punch or something. Is that what you're thinking about, kind of?
Our thought process is working with the artist to identify a way to either bring the installation back to the Illuminate MI event or downsizing it or something. So, you know, installing a few of the grasses in the outdoor gallery or something like that.
I love that. I was confusing it with thinking you were trying to wrap in the October event, which I think he might have a problem with the marketing aspect, because I know he's trying to keep it tight and market his name or his organization's name. So yeah, I think that's a great idea, bringing it back in some way. And I was even thinking if there's some way to I mean, this is going out there, but say, you know, everybody loves the Boyd collection. Well, there's outside the second level of that building, there's like a deck, you know, so it's kind of overhanging the street. And I just wonder if there's some way that, I'm just using that as an example of maybe he brings 10 of his pods out there, or maybe it's in the Chase Bank parking lot or somewhere else, but they actually could be around town. So, I mean, I guess we could all start putting our thinking caps on about how we might be able to expand on that.
I just want to interject really quick that spot is becoming a very popular spot. I've noticed that section of Boyd's, and just let's all remember that when we talk about mostly music in the park and possible add-ons and why maybe there's a lot of people in that area. What's going on there?
Let's also think
Carol,
about
what's going on. So, okay, Amy.
Oh,
one more question.
Oh, you're not done. Sorry.
Yeah, one more comment. I was just going to say also empty storefronts could be a possibility, because I think we are going to see a fair amount of empty retail space in the town center, but if we could activate it, it would be really exciting.
I love that. Okay, Amy and then Ryan.
Okay, I really would like to welcome them here for this exhibit, this installation, and I would like us to consider some funding. It's difficult to really consider it when they don't really have a target need. So I don't know what we're talking about. On the other hand, this is a practice run for them, and I think it's a benefit for them, right, to come here. So I think even a nominal funding to bring them here as a gesture and letting them know of our excitement of participating and however else we can help, I think would be fantastic. To encourage them.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I agree. Okay. Sorry, I just I do have something I wanted to add on to that. Sorry for the interruption. I think another way to look at projects like this, lest we forget that events like this that are an opportunity to bring people to the town center, to Mercer Island, are really an economic driver for the city. You know, one of the known statistics is that for every $1 spent on arts and culture events, that's $3 that gets spent on neighboring businesses. So it's just something I want to remind people when we're factoring in decisions about funding and benefits to the community. Just reminded me. And then I think, I don't know who is next, Ryan or Carol, and then Galen.
I will just echo, Aaron, what you just said, and that's exactly what I was leaning to, was the opportunity that it has to generate people coming to town center during a period that we're not usually seeing that. We're not generally offering an event or things like that. We're coming off of that summer event schedule oftentimes, and then waiting for our December, our winter events to start occurring. So I think that's an excellent point. The other thing I just wanted to highlight for the group, and Councilmember Neese will be hearing about this at his next council meeting, is we're actually going to be including an event, or requesting to include an event as part of Illuminate MI in that downtown area. And so there could be some really fun possibilities that this group has highlighted already that could be elements toward that event. And so I would encourage us to start thinking about that maybe in September as we're developing our plans for Illuminate MI. So I just wanted to share that with this group.
That sounds great. I'm going to say Carol and then Galen and then Salim.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot to add, but a couple short things. One, community arts can be creating that can also just be interactive. And this is clearly an interactive arts experience that involves the members of the community. So I think it works for that. In terms of funding, I think maybe we should work a little bit backwards, as we should look at the money we've devoted to the community arts project and see which parts of it we can pull out and allocate to this kind of project, and then see what's left. So if there's money left and we want to try to do some kind of tie-in, whether maybe it's, you know, getting the high school video group to record people and then put it on the CCTV, or, I mean, there's some ways that we could actually create some kind of, you know, interactive tie-in if you wanted it. I don't think it needs that, but I think we could see what money's left and figure out if there is something that might add to the project, or that can add to the project later during the Illuminate MI. That's all I had.
Thanks, Carol. Gayleen, do you still have a hand up?
Carol covered my point.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol.
Salim, did you have some comments?
Yeah, you know, I don't want to dilute Carol's comments, but I was thinking, based on the presentation, we knew that he needed some security. He knew that he had an operator that was going to be there for the whole show, maybe multiple operators. And so I was thinking, it's 3 days of shows, 24 hours a day, 2 people, $25 an hour gets you to $3,600. It felt like an appropriate level of mixed support. You know, obviously they're going to have to bring something to the table, which is all the lights, the equipment, the computers, laptops, the sound system and tents, the generators, what all the physical hardware is going to come from them. You know, if we could provide a subsidy that was at least based around some level of staff support of the event, which he indicated in his presentation, to me, that felt like a reasonable approach. And something that we wouldn't then as a precedent feel too shy about doing again. You know, if we did a smaller installation that required only one person, but it was still, you know, a similar kind of segment, it would be palatable.
Okay, so it sounds like we're moving into the funding discussion. Did we skip over making any decisions before we start talking? No.
Nope.
So I think the funding needs more than like a thumbs up vote, right?
Right. So, well, I guess let's first see kind of thumbs up, thumbs down, if where we're at in terms of providing some sort of financial support, and then we can figure out amounts and mechanism. So can I get thumbs up for those who want to financially support this project in some way? Okay. Okay, so the next thing is just how much.
Interrupt you really quick, just to make a clarifying question, just so that we don't skip over. Are we talking about fully replacing that previous community arts project we had talked about, like Suzanne suggested? This would be it. The interactive component, I think, comes with this installation, in that it is reactive to the community. But I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because I think, Carol, I'm interpreting your comments as feeling like we are still going to do some element of a community project, whereas Suzanne,
I was under the impression that possibly we would look at the money that's been allocated to the community project, and Sarah would determine that we can't allocate all of it to this kind of project, that it's not how it's been funded. And if that was the case, we'd have 2 pieces of information. One, what money is available to us, and then we could look at what Salim's talking about and decide whether or not all or some of that money should be allocated, or whether we would need more to make this particular project happen in a way that sets a good precedent. And second, if it turns out there's enough to fund, or there's a bucket of money that we actually cannot spend on this kind of project, then we can consider whether or not we want to do something else to use that money, because I believe we do have to use that money by the end of the year.
That is helpful. That clarifies the issue. So
and
Sarah,
I can provide a little more context for that. So originally, for what we were calling the Community Arts Project, which we had initially discussed as kind of a community art making something, documenting community members' experiences with the pandemic, we attach the For Culture Sustained Support Grant that we receive every year from For Culture to that project. And that grant this year is $10,580. So that would have gone to supplies, marketing, the whole gamut for that project. Now, last year we also had a sustained support grant that we initially at the beginning of 2020 planned to use for mostly Music in the Park and Shakespeare in the Park, which is what we've typically used that funding for in the past to support. Obviously, those programs didn't happen, so we had money on the table and a lot of activities going on to try to support the community and town center. So we were able to pivot a bit and use those funds still for arts activities, but they were a little looser. So I would say about half of the money that we received for 2020 supported all of the supplies and management for doing the community arts project, the Island Lanterns project. And then about half of the money went towards the temporary installation in the outdoor gallery. And we were able to do that because we tied it into kind of the bigger Illuminate MI piece of illuminating town center, encouraging people to return to local businesses and encouraging people to, regather, reclaim some of the sense of community, but still at a distance. So I think that and this year For Culture wants communities to use their funding to offset impacts again of COVID-19. And next year we'll go back to kind of the regular process and application of those funds. So all of that to say, I think we can use For Culture funding for this project. I do not recommend trying to grant the full $10,000 to the Moonlight Collective, because I don't think that that is an appropriate use of funds since For Culture has their own public art process. But since we are talking about it as an interactive event to some extent, talking about other ways potentially, I like the idea of them working with the high school band or dance studios on the island, or maybe even YTN or something like that. There are components to turn it into more of a community-wide activation and event, not just a public art installation. So to that end, I think Ryan and I discussed this earlier. I think we're looking for kind of a ceiling of what you want to use to support this project. If knowing that that grant is $10,000 and change, if you want to say up to $5,000 to support the creation and installation, I think that's well within the guidelines of the grant this year and would give you some wiggle room to do some other things either associated with this project or something else this year. That's a mouthful. Let's see. Galen, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether I think we should set aside some amount of money for expenses associated with the event that doesn't go directly to them. So for example, printing flyers is just one thing that comes to mind, but I think it would be a mistake to say, for example, we're gonna have 5,000, it's all going to them.
Amy?
Thanks. I was just wondering if we try to coordinate with some local businesses for them to benefit from these evenings as well, with some extra pop-ups or open a little bit later, or somehow bringing them in to participate as well. Does that end up being a cost that we have to account for because of your time or city's time coordinating that, or can that be volunteer only?
I think any staff time that goes into this is, and maybe don't hurt me, Ryan or Emily, but is accounted for in the fact that we're shifting away from the original community arts project. So we aren't doing the art making project, we're shifting to this, and the staff resources we were putting into that originally would go towards this. I think coordinating with businesses in town center is totally falls in line of economic development coordinator duties. So I think that's a great idea.
And so then if For Culture is intending money to go toward the communities recovering, doesn't that then fall into that bucket?
Yes, I think we can make the case for like using funds to support the marketing, support some sort of activities related to it, and that kind of thing. It can't be used for administrative costs. So actually I take that back. You could hire a contractor to coordinate everything if you deemed that necessary. But it can't be used for like our permanent staff resources, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think so. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Suzanne?
Yeah, some of my question maybe Amy was getting to her, but I guess, you know, you're stating that there's criteria from the For Culture or by For Culture that doesn't quite fit. Can you be clear what that is? I mean, why I'm just, to be extreme, why couldn't we give this organization the whole amount? And how would that be kind of in violation of our commitment to For Culture and spending those funds?
So there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is the nature of the project being essentially a public art installation, although it does have these interactive components. It's inviting the community out. It's still a public art installation, which is a different process for Culture. The second piece is that for the project budget, your expenses can't be 100% covered by the grant. So, you know, to some extent, we have to either attach it to something else, or that's where maybe Illuminate MI can come in, whether it's, you know, they just do their piece at the beginning in October and then they don't participate at all anyway. But it's just, it's very tricky to kind of give all the funding and then let it stand alone on its own. We would have to add something else, attach it to an event that's already happening to make up for that stipulation that it can't be 100% of your project budget.
So if I understand that, sorry. So For Culture grant can't be used for an art installation. It can be used for an art event or activity. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So can I ask a reverse question? If we don't grant the full amount to the Moonlight Collective, what would we be then using the remainder of the funds for in relation to this project? Because this is the community art project that we had dedicated this funding to be used for.
That's a good question. We'd have to figure it out. We'd have to either develop a different project, add on to something existing. So if you wanted to grant funding to this project and they don't participate in Illuminate MI or something else going on in the community, then you still have funding to do something else with that. I know that light art is something of interest for a lot of members on the board, and I love the tie-ins with Town Center and activating Town Center. So, you know, we could still pursue something like that. But I think part of not providing all of the funding is to leave some room to do something with this project. If there's another interactive piece, or reserving funding for marketing and that kind of thing.
But we do have to use all the money by the end of the year.
We do have to use all the money by the end of the year. We don't have to use the money, but it would be great to find a use for it that has a major community benefit.
And is it fair to say that if we allocate the money to a contracted event that occurs after the end of the year, that's still considered used? Or does the event have to be in the year?
That's kind of tricky. The event needs to take place in the year. Last year we were able to get around that because we used funding to purchase supplies for projects that actually came to fruition in 2021. I think it's it's more flexible right now than it usually is. So if for some reason we got closer to the end of the year and needed to figure something out, we still could with that funding and not leave it on the table.
Does anyone else have any thoughts? Maybe I'm just missing a piece here, but I feel like we have an event and a pretty articulated community benefit from it. It has significant costs, and we have an interest in helping provide some of those costs, like security, and we haven't talked about insurance, things like that. And we don't have any identified alternative uses for the money that needs to be used by the end of the year. So I'm concerned about not missing an opportunity to be able to use those funds to offer something to the community. Balancing.
Mm-hmm. So another way potentially to look at it is, rather than saying, you know, a definitive 5,000 is going to go to this, 5 is going to go to this, you could say, you know, put a ceiling again up to $10,000 to support creation and delivery of Prairie of Possibilities. And then you give the license to us staff to go and negotiate what that looks like. So if we come back to you and we say, we've got it all worked out, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and they're able to help us out with it, and so we're granting them the full $10,000, then that's fine. I think really what we need from you all is a cap, and that cap could include, you know, 8,000 going to the creation of this, but then 2,000 we deem that there's not enough interactive element to it, so we do something else. That kind of thing.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Amy, I think I saw your hand up, and then Eric.
Thanks. So of the funds that were granted from City Council from that budget, we didn't specifically allocate that across the projects, correct? I mean, we knew we were going to do mostly in the park, and we know we're going to try to reopen the gallery and then the community project, but we didn't. Did we actually allocate specifically to any of those?
Yes, 15,000 was dedicated to mostly music in the park, and then the remaining funds were for supporting the community art project as well as the gallery opening.
So that was about another 5K.
Yeah, we were allocated 20,000.
Okay, and then okay, and then Ryan, what's the current now day for the community center to open?
We are looking actually really good right now. I had a great week, and it's only Wednesday. We do have staff coming on board as early as next Thursday. So the facility, I'm still thinking, is on schedule to be opening up that last week of July, if not the first week of August, for those scheduled drop-in programs. And then I think we need to talk about what the gallery looks like moving forward with that. But resources are on, and so that's a huge positive step for us right now.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted us all to have a little bit of an idea where that other funding was being allocated, what it might impact if we try to move anything around.
Thanks, Amy. Eric?
I had a thought about doing maybe a lower ceiling for the first 3 days and then say, hey, if you guys decide to extend this or come back, the ceiling increases. So maybe we say, for this planned 3-night event, we'll give you up to $5,000 or 7,500. But if you decide to extend it or you come back later in October, that's maybe more in line with the other Eliminate MI, we can allocate this additional money and encourage them to make this last longer.
Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
I'm I'm seeing some thumbs popping up. I would just say from a staff standpoint, sorry to jump in, Sarah, giving us the ability to go out, you've given us great information tonight to move forward with. I think I can speak affirmatively saying that I think we're all on the same page of what we want to see out of this. And that gives Sarah and myself the opportunity to draft up a scope with James and really decide what is going to meet the needs that we do have and articulated tonight. So I feel really good about where we are. And I think Eric's comment there was spot on with Sarah and my thinking as well.
How could we articulate that into a motion? Is that what
I
we do right now?
actually already have that because I anticipated that this is where it was going to go. Let me just update it really quickly based on the conversation, but hold on just a second. All right, I'm gonna share. Still need to fill in one piece, but it sounds like we're there. So yes, anticipated that this was where we were gonna go. So the recommended action, the motion would be to pursue Prairie of Possibilities as the 2021 Community Arts Project and direct staff to negotiate a final project scope with the Moonlight Collective and direct staff to use, sounds like, for culture funds to provide a maximum of dollars to the Moonlight Collective to support creation and installation of Prairie of Possibilities. So I think I just need the number and then we can go from there.
Well, my question is, can we just enter a full maximum of 10,000 into that and then have you all negotiate any tie-ins and, 5,000 now, 3,000 later, whatever needs to happen?
Yeah,
that would be my preference.
Suggestion.
Yeah,
That would be my preference, to give you the leeway to use it all if we need to, because I don't want to end up not using money that is meant to benefit our community through culture and arts. So that would be my suggestion, to just fill that lineup with the maximum and then have you negotiate.
That gives us the biggest opportunity to get the biggest bang for our buck as well. It allows us to not continue to come back and whatnot, and just get some stuff done, which we're excited.
I feel like the wording needs to be slightly modified.
okay.
If you could put that wording back up again. Okay, right now it says direct staff to use for culture grant funds to provide a maximum of $10,000 to support creation of implementation and Prairie of Possibilities. So, okay, maybe it doesn't read that way. Okay, I was concerned that if we have monies that aren't going to Moonlight Collective, that also be within there. But I guess the way it's drafted here, that doesn't mean that all of that money is going to Moonlight Collective, because maybe it's support creation, promotion, and implementation. Something to say, cover the city's piece of it as well, not just their piece.
Okay. There's two hands raised. Suzanne, I see you.
Aileen, are you suggesting adding the word promotion to support creation, promotion, and
and some other word that I mean, I see two things missing. I see that there's some pieces that we would want to do that might involve some staff time or some other, actually expenses of in order to help promote this. And the other thing I'm not seeing in this language is anything that we're setting aside money for tie-ins to amp up the arts event portion of this versus the arts installation. I'm just not sure the wording really conveys that idea.
Mhm. So maybe,
We add the words promotion and then somehow the term community engagement of, or
Or it's a prairie of possibilities as part of a community arts event, something that goes to what the funding is supposed to be used for, as for culture provides, something at the end there.
If I
so
were to
actually,
Go ahead, Sarah.
I actually was just going to say, if we modified it, then we don't need to, because we already allocated the For Culture funds for the community arts project.
Right.
So what it could just be a two-pronged motion, move to pursue Prairie of Possibilities as part of the 2021 Community Arts Project and direct staff to negotiate a final project scope with the Moonlight Collective. How do we feel about that?
can you put that up so I can?
Yeah.
And Suzanne, do you want to make a comment?
Like Galen's point about adding promotion, and I would encourage staff to negotiate with Moonlight Collection and put that on their plate. I think that will help you, and I think they are geared up to do that. That's kind of their whole thing. So, and one suggestion I have along those lines is they talked about doing these, the website and this, it might even, well, they're going to develop this website. Could that loop of that video be played like at Music at the Park or at Art Uncorked? So there's just a table that, has some posters about this installation that's coming in October. And I think the live video could be playing at those events to really draw people in and get that on their calendar. But regardless of what it is, I like Galen's comment about putting some promotion work on their table. The one gal sounded like she was okay with the posters and whatever we can do. Also, I wonder, one other thing is, do you want to, so you guys are kind of talking about doing the October event, but plus tagging on, do you want that in the recommended action that, and subsequent?
Ryan and I discussed that would be part of the negotiation. So ultimately we are, we're hopeful that a final project scope would include Illuminate MI or some other element to it. So I think this is broad enough to give us the leeway to do that.
I think that we need to have the funding language in there.
Okay.
And I would read this as just Prairie of Possibilities, which is the Mercerdale event. I just wondered if you wanted to add and a subsequent Illuminate MI installation.
Well, if Illuminate is part of the 2021 Community Arts Project, then it's already covered.
Okay.
And I just would also want to clarify that I think in terms of promotion, I think that they should be doing the, production of a video or whatever else that piece, but I think the actual contacts with Mercer Island businesses would be better handled by Sarah.
Right.
Okay, I agree with that. But Galen, I don't think that the community arts project, the Illuminate MI, is sort of defined within that project.
Okay.
So I just think for clarity and transparency, I think having that sentence that you removed about, allocating up to a certain amount is helpful.
Okay.
Because that addresses funding and budgeting.
Could we get a show of thumbs on that? We kind of keep going back and
forth.
I think if we can streamline it a little bit, I think that would be helpful. I will just add that with these two items, I do think that it gives us the leeway to implement the project as needed from a development of a scope of work standpoint, which is you're talking about all operational items that fall with under staff. And so I would just encourage us to not get too detailed on this aspect, but that's up to the council.
Is it of value though, making sure that the proposal includes that these funds are grant funds and they're not coming out of the community budget?
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of alluding to, the fact that that statement right there in this motion and the community arts project is really undefined. Like, we know what we mean by that, but I would
recommend just adding on utilizing funding from the For Culture grant or something along those lines. I don't think you need to get specific with the dollar amount because we don't know what that scope looks like yet. And I think it puts you in a hard place trying to create a ceiling when you don't necessarily need to.
Well, the ceiling's automatic if you're using the, so there we have a ceiling, but we don't have to call it out.
So is somebody willing to make a motion that'll move us along?
Mhm.
Sarah, do you want to put it back up again then, or with the change in wording?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just, instead of putting it in presentation mode, if there's any other changes. So if we feel okay with this language related to the funding, then Aaron, you can ask for this motion, and all we need is a so moved and a second and then a vote.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to continue to take time away from this, but I just want to be a little more clear about that budgeting amount. And if, for instance, we say, even if we had the language where up to $10,000, if staff negotiates granting, 2,000 of that grant, then what happens to that remaining money? How are we going to determine and help utilize those funds to benefit the community per the For Culture mandate, or not mandate, but
If I can chime in on that, we do this a lot at the council level. And when we have a discussion like this with staff and staff takes that direction with a motion that is flexible like this, they always go out and exact the will of the body. And I don't think you're going to see staff coming back with a $2,000 motion. I think they understand from the discussion that the idea is to utilize the full grant. If they came back with something,
why don't we just state that then?
because they do it. I mean, they're really good at doing it. I think you can trust me that they will come back and do that for you. It's just my advice.
All right, well, I'll move that the recommended motion on my screen right now is what we support. I'm making that the motion, my motion.
A second.
You beat me. Unmute.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Okay. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Okay. Galen Baden.
Approve.
Amy Barnes.
Approve.
Erin Vivian.
Approve.
Suzanne Scone.
Approve.
And Eric Gordon.
Approve.
Oh, great. All right. Motion passes. So Ryan and I will get to work. Thank you for the robust discussion on this, for honoring our request to really consider all angles for this. I think this can be an exciting project, so we will help make it happen.
And I want to thank you all for the flexibility and openness to help move this along despite the timing issues and the fact that it wasn't necessarily in the plan. I think that the opportunity is just too good to pass up. So thank you for everyone's involvement with this.
And Erin, really quickly, just because I know we're almost at time right now, I am just going to make a recommendation that we postpone the bylaws conversation until September when we reconvene. It's not a highly pressing piece right now. And so I think if we could use the rest of the time tonight to do a reset plan update and then solidify our September meeting date, that would be probably most useful from the staff perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so let's move on to the third item of regular business to get an update on the arts reset plan process. First, consultant Emily Moon will update us on the city, and thank you for your patience, Emily. Welcome.
Great, thank you very much. I think the bulk of this is meant to be an update from committees. So the only piece that I'll pass along is just another status update on timeline. We are now anticipating that we are going to be bringing a draft package that outlines their overall budget for the Recreation Division to the Parks and Rec Commission in their meeting in September. So I think we will do something similar with the Arts Commission, bring forward a little bit more detail on kind of the organizational plan for the division and therefore how staff would be supporting the Arts Council, and double check with you, touch base on the allocation request for Arts Council. Then we're anticipating that budget proposal would go to the City Council at their first meeting in October. And that would be an opportunity for us to lay out in greater detail the plan and then get their feedback, incorporate any of that feedback into any subsequent revision that needs to be done for the biennial budget update. So the citywide update that would be happening in November. So that's our timeline. Given that boards and commissions and the City Council are basically taking the month of August off, what we will be doing is just continuing to have conversations with your subcommittees, thinking through how their discussions may lead to resource requests for 2022, and then packaging that up kind of behind the scenes and touching base with you all in September. So that's, I think, what I could relay. Sarah, is there anything else that you wanted me to touch on? Okay.
No, that's great. Thanks,
Okay.
Emily.
Really good.
Thank you, Emily. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Emily? Seeing none, let's move on to committee reports. I guess that's what I'm calling them, reports. Ryan, can you share with us the progress on Mostly Music in the Park?
We are going to have marketing materials probably rolling out as early as Friday. We have 3 bands under contract, and all of the pieces are in place. We're in a great spot going into those August dates. And I'll just remind the Arts Council that those are August 19th, August 26th, and September 2nd. In addition to that September 2nd date, which we're going to be starting that concert at 6 p.m., we'll be doing a volunteer recognition event as part of that, which the Arts Council will be invited to as a board and commission, as well as the Parks and Rec Commission and all others. So there will be some recognition happening there. Where we're going now, and I mentioned the promotion rolling out probably on Friday, we're going to be sending those postcards. I think we may have discussed that at a previous Arts Council meeting. Sending postcards to each resident on Mercer Island, notifying them that, hey, we're doing something fun again. This is great. Getting that rolled back out and building up some of that excitement about gathering again. My request would be for Arts Council members, once we start doing that, really talk and share that with your community members. I think that's it's been an avenue that's been extremely beneficial in the past. You know, as city staff, we can only talk to so many people and then we go home. But you guys are out there all of the time and have many more connections oftentimes than we do. So I'm really going to lean on you for that support. The other items are, we're looking at a couple of potential options to enhance those offerings, those 3 dates. So more information will come out on that. But we do, coming out of the pandemic, we do want it to be a special, literally a special event for the community. And from what I've heard, a lot of people are really looking forward to it. So I think you guys made an excellent decision prioritizing that work. So thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll share that I was able to attend the art walk for a few minutes briefly on, when was that? The 9th, whatever day that was. And I confirmed with a few community members who had seen some speculation about Mostly Music in the Park happening, and they were ecstatic to find out that it's indeed happening, like very, very excited. So it's a good thing. This is just a technical question. We used to do introductions at Music in the Park. Are we going to talk about doing that again?
We will.
Because we won't have a meeting. Oh, we will have, no, we won't have a meeting before they start. We used to do a sign up list.
Aaron, we're definitely having another meeting between you and Eric and I.
Oh, okay. But I just meant like we used to rotate amongst the not committee members, the arts council members.
So right. I think that's something that you and I and Eric need to discuss, what the actual logistics for that, and that's sort of the phase we're at now, is really hitting those details. So okay. I think the three of us can talk probably with Matt Loam as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Okay, Suzanne. Well, I guess we don't really need to have an update on the community art project. Amy, do you have anything to share about the indoor gallery?
Well, we met, Carol, Claudia, Sarah, and I met and had long discussions about a lot of things. Very briefly, we're doing the best that we can to come up with a plan while being completely reactive to the community center reopening and how that will work. So there are a lot of details, a lot of moving parts. We're just trying to get things up and running as best we can. I mean, Carol, if you'd like to share anything in particular, please do. It's just, I feel like we're just down in the details trying to come up with a plan for this that works with the community center. And
yeah, I think at our meeting, I mean, we're waiting for information from the city council, which you may or may not have, and for Ryan and Sarah to feel comfortable that they have staff in place to go with something. I think we were pretty specific about what some of those things can be and what else we want to look at in terms of content. For example, the people who were supposed to hang art in 2020. So who we could work with, what we can do before the end of the year. So I think we have some very specific plans, but as Amy says, that could be implemented, but it's also reactive right now that I don't think we need to take people's times with specifics until we know we have a timeline in which to try to go forward with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, hopefully these questions will start to clear up as we keep moving forward. We're just re-entering life, right? But thank you for the update. Sarah, do you have anything to share about long-term planning?
Yeah, Suzanne, Eric, Emily, and I met a couple of weeks ago to start talking or to review her draft 2022 City Arts work plan. And then we're also started having some conversations, bigger picture conversations about the next biennium, 23 and 24. So we have another committee meeting on the books for August. And our hope is to come back to this group perhaps in September, around the same time that we're having the organizational support conversation with the rec team to present that draft city arts work plan for next year. And then that committee will continue working as well to address some of these policy need issues, helping to prioritize that, starting to look more at public art needs, which we've set aside a little bit in a lot of these conversations right now. But yeah, we're plugging along, looking forward to a future where city arts work is really back on the table. So things are moving well.
Awesome. That's good. I think we're all moving in a good direction considering the year we had. Board members, does anyone have any other questions or comments about the reset? All right, seeing none and considering the time, we are going to move to rescheduling the September meeting. I think that's our last item on the agenda, besides reminding people to report volunteer hours. But it looks like we discussed last month revisions to the summer regular meeting schedule. As a reminder, we will not meet as a full board in August. We will also need to reschedule the September regular meeting, which currently falls on the last day of Rosh Hashanah. Here are a few other September dates suggested by staff. Thursday, September 9th, Tuesday, September 14th, and Wednesday, September 15th. Board members, do you prefer any of these dates?
And just as a reminder too, it will be virtual again, since we haven't shifted into the hybrid model yet for boards and commissions.
I would prefer the first date. My daughter's getting married the next week, so I'm going to be in New York and pretty busy. So
yeah, congratulations. You don't want to zoom in to the Arts Council at your daughter's wedding?
Not really.
Yeah.
Sarah, if I could make a suggestion, the Parks and Recreation Commission has set a September 9th meeting.
Oh, that wasn't, Ryan, that wasn't on the city calendar.
I know it wasn't. We just confirmed it. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So just a heads up, I mean, that would be a challenge for Emily and myself for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Would it be too soon to make that a joint meeting? We had talked about doing some of those. Is that too much too soon?
I don't think it would be a great meeting for the art. It's a lot of policy conversation from the arts or from the Parks and Rec Commission. So I don't know that a joint meeting would necessarily work on that date.
Too long. It would be too long of a meeting.
Yeah, it would.
Okay.
So what were the other dates?
The other dates are the following Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday the 14th, Wednesday the 15th. We can also look later into September as well.
Either of those is probably fine for me.
Yeah, we don't want to get too close to the prairies thing, which would be the 1st of October if we're going to have to talk about that. And don't forget, Art on Quirk is the 10th. So.
Okay. Does anyone have any like known conflicts on the 14th or the 15th?
No.
Okay, I'm not gonna, I guess, I don't know. Am I gonna be on the Arts Council by then? I have no idea. So I don't wanna like make my opinion a deciding factor, but it seems like having it on a Wednesday, because we normally have Wednesdays, might be a good idea in case people have like Tuesday conflicts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's fine.
Do we want to tentatively say the 15th? I know, Galen, that means that'll be out for you. So hopefully we can check in about it if needed.
Well,
when we
Galen,
see
would you
back
be
on
able to
October
do the Tuesday as opposed to the Wednesday, or you're just out that week?
I'm not sure what time my plane reservations are. We're flying out on Tuesday. So,
Yeah, you're probably out for that week.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's plan on tentatively the 15th. I'll double check the city calendar again to make sure nothing else is going on that night. And if we need to adjust, I will follow up with all of you.
That sounds like a good plan, Sarah. So tentatively September 15th for the next Arts Council meeting at 6:30 via Zoom, unless we hear otherwise from the city. So finally, as a reminder, staff are attempting to streamline volunteer hours, the reporting process, and Sarah has recorded regular meeting hours and committee hours for everyone to date. Thank you, Sarah. That's very nice of you. If you have other hours to report, please send them to Sarah as soon as possible. And is there any other last minute business to discuss or items to report? Last call. Seeing no hands, I think that we are going to adjourn the meeting. It's 8:37, and thank you everybody again for attending yet another Zoom meeting. I think despite the fact that it's a challenge, we're getting some great things done. So only good things to come for the Arts Council from here on out. Spread the word, have people apply.
Yes. Great. Have
All
a
right.
great night, everyone. Thank you for your time.
You too.
Night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.